love the channel and find it useful in becoming a happy retiree. Subscribe today. So there's obviously a lot to talk about here today. We could do a 5-hour Money Matters, but we only have 2. We're live here in the studio this morning. The number 404-872-0750. Again, 404-872-0750. 1-800-WSB Talk. And then finally, in a world, well, and this is, I'm not going to do a big I told you so, but, I'm very, very careful about talking about performance, and I'm never going to jump up and down and say, this is the best stock ever. You've got to invest this way. That's not our style here on Money Matters. Never has been, never will be. But it is my job to point out value. And, I think about the most recent letter, and this is a totally separate topic, and I'm going totally off script here because it kind of hit me this morning as I read something that we invest for a long period of time, and there has been this great attraction to just following an index. And that, for the most part, the reason why that works is because even though the index is good, and if you look at the S&P 500, the reason it is so good for most investors that most investors are not great at investing. You might be a good saver, but when it comes to having your money invested and watching the gyrations of markets, stocks up, stocks down, bonds up, bonds down, that can be kind of emotionally painful. And that's why most investors don't ever even get close to the index, let alone even close to the 8 or 9% you've seen for the S&P 500 or 9.5 to 10% for the S&P 500 over time because of how difficult it is emotionally to kind of stay put. But I'm also reminded, when I look at Buffett's most recent letter, what he does every year is he tracks his performance, and this is all on one powerful page. He tracks what his fund has done every year. Or Berkshire Hathaway it's a stock or a company, but it's really a holding company made up of a bunch of other stocks, if you will. So it's very much like a mutual fund, and he tracks the performance of the companies that he's bought or big positions of relative to the S&P 500. And it's all years, all the way back to 1965, are listed on this one very important sheet of paper. And you go down from year to year to year, you'll see that Buffett has years that are over 50%. There's a couple years where they're over 100% rate of return. And these are in the early years. And he'll be the first to tell you that the earlier years when his fund or his company was much smaller, so the late 60s and through the 70s, it was such a small fund that he had the ability and the nimbleness to say, hey, I'm going to be pretty concentrated in a couple of these companies that I really think have a lot of upside. And that's how he's gotten these 50% plus years, in a couple cases over 100% in a given year. And if you track next to that line going down the page, you'll see the S&P 500. And some years he did better than the S&P by a lot, some by a little, and sometimes the S&P outpaced Buffett. But over time, when you have something that is compounding even 1 or 2 or 3% better, the results can be dramatic. And I know we're in an age where the proverbial, the default has been, let's just buy the index. There is still something to be said for finding a strategy that really works over time, even if it's only 1 or 2 or 3% better than an international index or even a U.S. index. The results of that one page, it shows what Buffett has done over time because his compounding has been better than the market. You get down to the very bottom, you'll see the cumulative rate of return all the way back from 1965 until the end of last year in the S&P 500 has a cumulative rate of return or internal rate of return of over 15,000%, which is just a tremendous number. You look at the annual compounding number there, it's about 9.9%. Let's round that off to just a full 10. If you look at the column of Berkshire Hathaway, which is this one particular holding company in itself, because of the compounding effect, has been closer to 20% per year. So you've got basically 10% versus 20% over time per year. The difference, though, between the 15,000% for the S&P 500 and the cumulative gain having a 20% rate of return like Berkshire is astounding. And I actually have published this in an article or two, just because it's hard to even believe these numbers without looking at the page. But over time, Berkshire has compounded at 2.4 million% over time. 2.4 million% over that same exact period of time. It has turned people like Buffett and so many of his investors into not just wealthy people, but some of the very richest people on the planet. On the planet. So the steady drumbeat over the last several years of just throw it in the index and that's as good as you'll ever do, that's just not true. And we are a show of optimism, and we are a show of trying to find opportunity, which is very different. And I had a client of mine point this out this week, is that so much financial radio is there to scare you, because it's actually easier to scare you. It's easier to pick out the 5 or 10 things that are the worst about our economy and the world we live in and talk about that for 2 hours, scare the living daylights out of everybody listening, and then you say, hey, go buy an annuity because it's, quote, protected. That's a pretty easy strategy for somebody on the radio that's in finance to talk about. And that's why most of what you hear on financial radio, that's the gig. That's not the gig here. We're here to talk about optimism and opportunity, which can lead to real wealth, because investing can lead to real wealth. And that's exactly what we'll continue to do right here on Money Matters. Hi, I'm Wes Moss, and thanks for taking a minute to hear about what's so different about my new book, You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think. So unlike other retirement books, this book will give you a step-by-step guide, whether you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, to learn from what these successful and happy retirees did to get there. I hope you enjoy the book, but more importantly, I know that it'll help you retire sooner than you think.